Welcome to Lighting the Educational Flame, created and produced by educator and author Mark Hoberman, owner and director of Grade Success Tutoring. Mark will be joined by Susan Brender, CEO and host of The Susan Brender Show. The purpose of this program is to offer our listeners a variety of stories dealing with many interesting topics surrounding education. It is our hope that students and parents alike will benefit from the wide range of topics, including study skills, test prep, anti-bullying, sports, music, and more. We hope you enjoy our show, Lighting the Educational Flame.
Hello and welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, brought to you by Grade Success Education. I'm Mark Hoberman, and my co-host, as always, is Susan Brender. How you doing today, Susan?
Oh, I'm so pleased to be on your show all the time. Every time we're doing something, we're educating people, and I'm just so delighted about that.
Absolutely. My pleasure as well. We have a great guest today who's going to talk about how he mixes education and comedy together, training at corporations and being on the stage. So let's bring him on. Our guest today is comedian and motivational speaker, Greg Schwem. Greg, welcome to Lighting the Educational Flame.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Mark and Susan. Pleasure.
Pleasure. Greg,
Yes,
what made you decide to follow your passion and become, of all things, a comedian?
Well, comedy was just a hobby. When I was a kid, I was fascinated with stand-up comedians. I was fascinated with watching them, and I used to stay up late and watch some of my favorites. And I always remember from a very early age enjoying making people laugh, enjoying that reaction. So I just decided to try it in high school. That's the first time I ever got on stage, and it was always a hobby. I always thought it would be a hobby, but in the mid 80s, which was probably one of the explosion times of stand-up comedy, I was living down in Florida, not knowing anybody down there. And it was a way I used to go hang out at the comedy clubs just to have something to do. And I would get on stage. It's funny, when you're a performer, you don't feel like as much of a loser because you don't know as many people. It's like, well, I'm here I'm with the band type of thing. So, gotcha. And the more I did it, the more I realized I was a journalist. That was my background. But I eventually realized I enjoyed doing stand-up more than, I always say I enjoyed entertaining people more than depressing them, right. Which I kind of felt like what I was doing as a journalist every day. So that's why I made this.
Greg, I'm going to stop you for a second because we're living in a very difficult time right now. Yeah. And if you don't have humor in your life, you have nothing. Because right. There is nothing like humor. It makes people feel happy. And now we're not having a lot of happy people. There are a lot of people who are depressed, anxious, you name it. Mm-hmm. And I think that what you do is adding something special to people all around the country.
Well, I agree with you. And honestly, I think the COVID-19 crisis has definitely cast humor in a new light. Let me explain that. I think before the pandemic, I think humor was in somewhat of a precarious position because I think people were very always on their guard. Like, I'm not saying I wasn't getting hired to do what I do, but I was having to sell people a lot on you. Make sure you don't say this, or this, because somebody in the audience of 2,000 people might be offended. And then we're getting, and I was getting that all the time. And I think people now have really started to see the positive benefits of humor versus the possible negative ramifications of it, of which I don't think there are any, depending on the type of humor that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Mark, let me ask you something. You make me laugh. I tell the audience all about that because you have a fabulous sense of humor. Okay. Where'd you get that from? I mean, people.
Probably from my mother, although I never heard her tell a joke. And I used it as a defense mechanism when I was diagnosed with epilepsy. When I lived in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale for a year, in Hollywood for a year. And, as a teacher, that's what made me what I think is the teacher I was. Hopefully I was very effective. Mm-hmm. And people always say, oh my God, you have to be a comedian. You have to be a comedian. And you're so funny. And I said, thank you. But I would have to know everybody in the audience. I'm only funny because I know the people. I'd have to go away to a hotel for 3 days with the audience. I have to see them at all meals. And so I do get that from my mother. She could take a joke. She had a great sense of humor, but she never told a joke. But it leads me to my next question because, I always say on the show, we know the glory, but not the story. So when it comes to comedy, Greg, what's not so funny about the work needed to be a comedian? Because it's not an
let me just backtrack a little bit. It's so funny that you say if you would be a comedian, you would have to know the entire audience.
Right.
My biggest piece of advice for people wanting to get into stand-up is I say, you don't want to know the audience. I go, the first time you try stand-up, I go, do not do it in front of your friends, because I say, here's what's going to happen. I go, your friends, they're all going to come out and support you. They're going to laugh too long, too hard. They're going to laugh at all the wrong places. And when you're done, they're going to tell you how great you were when you probably weren't that funny. Yep. And I go, you get a very false sense of success. And I always say, if you go and do it in front of a bunch of strangers who don't know you, have no vested interest in you, right, then if you don't do well, who cares? You don't know them, they don't know you, you all leave for the night and you just erase it from, you decide if you want to try it again. However, if you can make strangers laugh, you might be onto something. Yeah. So that's my advice right there. Now, to get to your question about what's the not funny part of being a comedian, actually, people always say to me, they're like, oh, I could never get on stage and tell jokes. That just looks so complicated. That looks so hard. I always say that's the easy part. It's the rest of the day. It's the rest of the day that I think is tough. And very few comedians, people always say to me, who's your agent? Who's your manager? A very, very small percentage of entertainers live in that stratosphere where they have all these people. The rest of us are on the phone, trying to get gigs, writing material, and avoiding the temptation that a lot of, I think, entertainers fall into of, I really only have to work 1 hour a day, so I'll just sleep until 4 p.m.
Right, go to the gig.
I'll maybe do things I shouldn't be doing. And a lot of great, I think, careers in show business have been derailed because people don't realize that entertainment on any level is a business.
Greg, here's the thing. Many years ago, and I'm giving you away my generation, if you will, there were comedians that were amazing. I mean, you could probably list them for me. I can tell you, Henny Youngman. I mean, let's go through the whole thing. Mark, do you remember some of those comedians that were?
Yeah, I listened to Henny Youngman every day. There was something called Dial a Joke back in the 70s. And you would call and take my wife, please. You'd hang up the next day, next joke, all these things. So yeah, Rodney Dangerfield, I saw live. All these people, most of the comedians I've seen that were old school, never cursed. And I have seen the ones who've cursed, and I've enjoyed them as much. But it's a different generation for sure.
It is. That's right. Yeah. There's still a lot of great comedians out there. I mean, there's a lot. I think the tone of comedy has changed somewhat. I'm always really kind of relieved, I think, when I see a great comedian, maybe a younger generation comedian who actually looks like they've put in the time and the work, because I think a lot of them don't.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something, Greg. I have a friend whose son happens to be a comedian. Now, he has autism. He's on the spectrum. He's Asperger's. And when he's joined a comedy club in California, his whole life changed.
Sure.
He was, needless to say, a little bit about autism. I have to tell you, comedy changed his life. And the people who were involved in the comedy world stick together. They're all your friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And when I moved to Florida, comedians became my friends. And I think one of the reasons we bond is because I think sometimes we're the only people who can relate to what we do. Oh, sure. It's almost, it's like, I think, doctors tend to hang out with doctors. Cops tend to hang out with cops. Because there are just certain professions that are it's very hard to explain sometimes what you go through with somebody who hasn't already experienced it. So yeah, for that reason, I have spent some of my funniest, I always say, one of the things I really enjoy is a bunch of comedians getting together talking about their worst performance ever. Because no matter how bad you think yours was, somebody else has a worse one, and it's not like they're trying to top you. It's just, it was worse, and it kind of makes you feel better.
Well, when you talk about, you said something about, So if it's people you don't know and they don't laugh, who cares? And I've done retirement parties and I've agonized and made sure everything was perfect. But I'm telling you now, if I'm on stage and I say a joke and they don't laugh at that joke, I'm leaving the stage. Never to return.
You're not even going to try it. For
Never
like
again.
double or
I don't,
nothing?
I got to have two relatives, two aunts laughing at no matter what the hell I'm talking about. So, and talking about piggybacking on what Susan said about comedy changing someone's life. You're changing lives differently now, just than the regular comedy audience. What made you realize that you were able to combine comedy and motivational speaking and training in corporations? It's just melding those two together is a very interesting concept to me.
It is. I mean, doing corporate events is something that very few comedians do. Certainly, I think, and I know it sounds very biased, but I think every corporate event needs a laugh break.
Oh, for sure.
They all do. Some don't. It's amazing how many don't think they do. They just look at their schedule for 3 days, and it's just, serious speech 1, serious speech 2, serious speech 3, and they think that's a great event. And of course, those are all topics that need to be covered, but you have to have something that's a break. Now, what happened for me, it was sort of twofold. Number one, when I moved back to Chicago to be a comedian full time and I wasn't making a lot of money, I hooked up with a trade show company that did live trade show presentations. That when you go on a trade show floor, sometimes they have these live, like 5 to 6 minutes presentations about, hey, this is our new product, this is our new this. I was that guy. I wrote them, and I was also the presenter, and I learned a couple of things. I learned how to make people laugh in a very quick amount of time, how to entertain them quickly. And I also learned that just about any subject could be funny, because I had these companies saying, okay, we want you to write a 6-minute presentation about our new microchip, but make it fun. Okay. I know.
How interesting.
What
a topic.
But I would say, okay, let's suppose we have this scenario. Let's suppose we do a parody of a David Letterman talk show, and I interviewed 3 guests, and we weave information about the microchip into the talk. That sounds great. And do you mind if the people that are watching the presentation, do you mind if I just every now and then go off script and riff with them? Sure, that'd be fun. So I started doing that, and I started thinking that there is humor in corporate America in some of these topics. And I was learning how to customize and write material about these topics. And little by little, that kind of stuff on small bases made it into my nightclub act.
Oh, okay.
I would start just interjecting a little bit about business and what I saw on the trade show floor in Vegas. And I was just at CES, and you're not going to believe what I saw. This is a robot that flushes the toilet for you, type of thing. You're going to buy this in 5 years, you guys. And the more of that material I did, the more people would come up to me after shows and say, would you want to come and speak at our meeting or our golf tournament or anything like that? And honestly, I didn't know that these kind of meetings even existed. Again, my background was in journalism, so I didn't know that they had 3-day conferences in Orlando and stuff. This was a whole new world. And once I started to get hired for this stuff, and I realized I could make these audiences laugh, I just decided this was where I wanted to be. This was going to be my niche.
Yeah. Mark, excuse me. I want to ask Greg, belly laughing is one of the most wonderful things. It changes your whole attitude.
And healthy.
And healthy as well, Mark. You're absolutely right. Now, when you're doing your shtick, if you will, do you hear them laughing, and is it coming from their, as I said, from their belly, and are they saying to you afterwards, you made me laugh and this has made my life so much better?
Yeah, I do. Yes. Is that a regular reaction? I wouldn't say so. I don't think, but what I do tend to like, what I see on people's faces when I'm doing a corporate event, is just them realizing that it's okay to laugh at themselves. It's okay for them to laugh at their work environment, their company. Here's a guy who's not part of that, who has it's like what I said earlier about performing for strangers. I have no real vested interest in this company. I'm just the outsider coming in saying, So, tell me about this that you do, because here's kind of the way I see it, or I'll show them a picture on their website that they, that's on their website, and I'll kind of poke fun at it a little bit. And I kind of see people looking, they're laughing kind of like, yeah, like I've always noticed that too. I've just been afraid to say it. And I always say at my shows, my one goal is I want people to leave. If it's a company that I'm working for and my audience is employees of that company, I want them to leave thinking this is a really cool place to work because they hired him. That to me is almost better than, really gut-wrenching belly laughs. Just people leaving thinking, I have to come to work every day, and every day's not the best day, just like any job. But this was pretty cool, because in a lot of companies I've worked for would never have somebody like that guy.
Sure. It's a game changer for them. Belly laugh lasts for the belly laugh, but if they walk out with that kind of attitude, and in turn, that helps productivity. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned about motivational speaking. That is my way of motivating. I am not one of these. I don't consider myself a motivational rah-rah. Everybody wear a button on their lapel with a slogan that I came up, you can be best, or whatever. I'm not that guy. And nor do I ever want to be. But to me, laughter is very motivational.
Do you ever consider writing for TV or for the stage at all?
I've tried sitcom writing. I found it very tedious and very tough.
Very hard work.
I am a writer. I mean, as I said, my background is in journalism. I do write a column every other week for the Chicago Tribune Syndicate. And I've been doing that for 10 years, and they let me write about basically whatever I want to write about, which is nice. And then I've got a side project where I'm hosting a TV travel show, A Comedian Crashes Your Pad. That's what you know what, you guys, I would make a horrible TV weatherman. If you ever see me on TV, I'd be
I don't know how they do it. They get right to the right state. It's crazy.
I know, and I'd be on there going, there's wildfires in California, take cover. And everybody be like, yeah, but you just pointed at South Carolina.
Yes.
So that's comedy, if you will. Yeah. You made me laugh about that. Now, the other thing, Mark, that I'm interested in knowing is that if you're involved in comedy, do you improvise? Do you ever do improvisation? Because from my standpoint, that's a pretty interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm an improviser in the fact that I will talk to the audience, ask them what they do for the company, that kind of thing. What is their role involved? I find if I get people talking and keep asking them questions, eventually they will say something funny that I can kind of work off of. I'm not in an improv troupe or anything like that. I never have been. That's a whole different troupe. Comedy is a whole different kind of comedy. I've tried it. It's just never really appealed to me. I've always wanted to just be, I'm more comfortable just me, where I am in charge of if it's good or if it's bad, it's all on me. I would rather take full responsibility.
Well, talk about taking full responsibility. I really want to hear more, and I know the viewers want to hear more about your new project.
About A Comedian Crashes Your Pad. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we talked earlier about when I said the hardest part of comedy, of my job is the rest of the day, the time I'm not on stage. People fascinate me. Talking to people have always fascinated me. And one of the things when I was a TV news reporter, one of the things you would have to get good at very quickly was getting people to open up on camera, getting them to talk about sometimes very horrible things. So, and there's skills involved in that. But to me, everybody has a story to tell. So a couple of years ago, I became somewhat fascinated with the home share environment, the Airbnb, and the people that listed their homes and invited strangers without any vetting whatsoever to say, I mean, it's one thing to pick somebody up in your own car, like an Uber, but you throw them out after 15 minutes. There's an end to this. But to invite them there to stay for the whole night or 3 nights or something, that's different. And I thought, who are these people? They have to have an interesting story. And so I thought, well, as long as I'm on the road and I'm a little bored, maybe because I'm trying to fill my day. Why don't I, maybe when the show's over or the next day or the day before, I would find an interesting home share host. I would get online, either an interesting property or more, I was more interested for the way that people described themselves, and stay with that person and see how it goes and film my encounters. And that's how A Comedian Crashes Your Pad was born. So it's basically me just showing up sight unseen at a place, staying with them for the night, and filming my experience with the host and interviewing them. And then they show me around their property. We go out and we do things. I want to find out about their lives. I always like to say they're the star of the show. I'm more the straight man. And so I've shot 37 episodes. They started out as me just shooting them on an iPhone.
Okay.
And little by little, I got a little more interest, and I hired a professional crew. And just last November, I signed a distribution deal with an LA-based firm. So now the episode that ups the game for 2021. And I did this in the age of COVID, which I'm very proud of.
That's amazing. Congratulations for that. That's no small task. The entire story from start to finish. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, there you can go. I have two websites. You can go to gregschwem.com. Hopefully you'll put that up in the episode. So
I will.
And then a comediancrashesyourpad.com. So that's where you can see and learn about the TV show and where to find full episodes.
So people can watch full episodes now, tomorrow, that soon? Okay.
Yes, I've been doing
Greg,
this for a
let
while.
me ask you something. We're almost at the end of the show, and this show is supposed to teach parents and teens many different things. So I want the show, and I want Mark, and he'll probably ask you this as well, but let me ask you something. How would you like to leave this show? Telling parents and telling teens, what do you think will make them feel that they've learned something from this?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, I have spoken about what I do in a lot of high schools. I have, sometimes high schools, they want people with very interesting careers to come in and talk. And I have talked about bettering the art of public speaking. Public speaking and communication, I think, is a dying art. It shouldn't even be an art. It shouldn't even be called an art.
Right.
Talking is not an art. That's not a skill.
It should be a given.
It should be a given.
Right.
And if I can leave both parents and teens with something, it is that eventually you're going to have to not be able to rely on this. Eventually you're going to have to talk. You're going to have to get in front of somebody. And this is what I tell kids. You're going to have to it might be why you're the best candidate for this job, why they should give you $50,000 because you've got this great idea that you want to pursue. And to just, and this goes with parents too, to teach your kids to talk, teach your kids to talk one-on-one without having to rely on the phone or technology in general to do everything. Teach them how to navigate a city without having to rely on GPS all the time, how to look for landmarks, what if your phone dies, that kind of thing. That's what I've always tried to do.
That's great advice, because I remember I taught English for over 30 years, and one of my favorite years is when I was asked to teach speech, and I didn't know enough about it. I had to do my research, but I have to tell you that what kids were able to do, I could never do in high school. If somebody asked me to speak for more than 5 seconds in front of a class, because they say that public speaking is the second biggest fear. One is death, and two is public speaking. Right. So the fact that they're hearing it from you, who's in a very tough career and who's made a success of it and has taken it further, I think is phenomenal advice. So I'm so glad that Susan asked you that. So Greg, in closing, Susan and I can't thank you enough for joining us today, sharing your experiences, both in corporate and comedy, sharing that with our viewers. Thank you so much. And to the viewers, remember to reach out to us on social media. Look for Grade Success on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. You can also find me, Mark Hoberman, on LinkedIn. Again, thanks to Greg Schwem for being with us today. Susan, as always, thank you. And to the viewers, don't forget to tune in to our next show. This is Mark Hoberman thanking you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame on the Grade Success Education channel, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Lighting the Educational Flame with Mark Hoberman. To contact Mark, email him at info@gradesuccess.com.